Thank you all for coming. Thanks for EJ for having us. Okay, so first thing we need to do, Meredith is remote, so we need the official motion to.
Right here.
Who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that Meredith Cole's request to attend today's meeting of the JMRL board remotely due to a personal matter, specifically work obligations, be approved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, the minutes of our February meeting. Hope everybody's had a chance to go over them. Additions, corrections. If not, may I have a motion to accept them as presented? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The announcements. Okay, any public comments?
If anybody on the Zoom feed would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand function now. No public comment this afternoon.
Moving right along. Okay, for continuing education, we're very pleased to have EJ Dowling with us. The Green County Branch Manager. We're going to talk about the Library Cookbook Book Club.
And I have some slides that I sent David that will get up, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so hi, my name is EJ. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the branch manager here at Greene County Library, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit very briefly about the Cookbook Book Club, which is a program that started here at Greene County. It started, go to the next slide, please, David. It started somewhere between 2017 and 2018. Nina Wright, who is right here, you might recognize her. She's a longtime staff member here at Greene County. She's been involved in the club since its inception. It started as something to do with something JMRL was doing called How To Tuesdays back in the day, before I was here. They did this thing called How To Tuesdays, and that's how this iteration of Cookbook Book Club was born, was them kind of just trying new recipes out of different library cookbooks, which kind of births itself into a potluck-like club here at the Greene County branch. There were mostly teens and parents for the first couple of meetings back in 2017, 2018, and then eventually they started to take suggestions of cookbooks and decided on an around the world theme, and then worked through cookbooks from different countries and different types of cuisine and so on. After this was into 2020, right into there, we moved into, unfortunately, the Zoom era of Cookbook Book Club, which did exist from about 2020 to about 2022. They did meet on Zoom, and what they did was they would just cook any recipe they could find from any library book they could get their hands on within a general theme, but mostly it was something to get together, talk about books, conjugate, as a group, as we all kind of needed in that time. And so they did meet on Zoom for a long time. Eventually, they started meeting right outside in the reading garden, which is right outside our back door here. They had to lug our big heavy tables that we used to have in here out there, and they were doing it out there for a number of months. Eventually, by summer 2022, they were back inside, and they were very happy to be away from the insects. And so they were back in here by then. I started at this branch in December of 2023 as the branch manager. And so in that time period before I started, Nina was largely running the club alone. And so I've come in to try to help administratively as best as I could, help her through the thing. So a couple of stuff I have instituted with, oh, there's Martha in this picture. I didn't even realize you were in here. Martha's a member of the Cookbook Club. A couple of things I've started to do introduce a sign up notebook, which is how we can stop duplicate recipes from happening so that lots of people can have all the recipes that we do. We have menus every month. We have rack card schedules of when the clubs are, including the cookbooks. The cookbooks used to be a surprise every month for everyone, which was fine for a while, but I've liked releasing the schedule, and participants have been very happy for that. They can kind of look ahead, they can choose the recipes ahead of time, especially if they're not going to be in town for a month to look at the recipe in the branch. They can pick ahead their recipes based on what we put out there. I've done outreach for additional members at Four Seasons, which is a kind of a 50+ community here in Green. We have quite a few number of them that come now every month to this club, to the point where they've started their own kind of mini club on their own outside of the club, doing their own type of cookbook book clubbing outside of our club, but with us as well. We're labeling food dishes for dietary restrictions and things like that. And then we also had a couple of questions because our previous registration form did not have a note for dietary options, gluten-free, things like that. When I started the Family Edition Cookbook Club, which is actually on the next slide, it was important to me and to parents who were going to come to this, or actually 2 more, sorry, that families know exactly what was going to be in all of the things, especially if their kids were cooking with them. And so we started putting that on the registration forms, and then I talked to Sarah, who actually put it on every single registration form on Trumpa. So now if you register for a program, it says, do you have any dietary restrictions? Which actually is great, because a lot of programs at JMRL offer cookies, cheese and crackers, things like that. So it's good to know if you do need to provide some sort of a special snack for someone. This is the Family Edition of the Cookbook Book Club. We started in November 2024, was our first meeting. It ranges for ages 6 to 12. Teens are allowed in the regular version, so we kind of went lower for this one with a parent or guardian to come in. And we gave them 2 options to pick from the first time. We noticed pretty much everybody went from this one, the harder of the 2. So for our meeting next month, we're going to be all doing from this one here, the Big Fun Kids Cookbook. They can come in, they can pick any recipe they want, they can get a copy at the desk for free to take home and to make, and then they will bring in their dish. This cookbook obviously is great for kids. It's got a lot of fun activities, things like that. In the Family Edition, it's much shorter. It's about an hour. Try to keep them in and out as much as quickly as we can. We come in, we eat, we talk about the process of cooking, and then we do an activity together, whether that's watching a cooking video and talking about that, or even some of this one, spoilers for next month, we're going to do something to find it or identify activities together in this one. So just to learn about cooking in general, not just as best as we can. It is with everyone's families, and so the families that cooked it are all usually there to talk about food. You go back one more slide. Perfect. This is the notebook that I was referring to of all of the recipes here. So you come in, you request the book at the desk, and then you grab this month's book, which is this one here. Each of them have one of these on it. It's how we know it can't get checked out during that month, so that it doesn't leave the building. And you pick your recipe and the page number. Everyone looks at this, and then that way we kind of determine that there's not too many repetitive recipes, so we get through a lot of these cookbooks throughout everything. And then over here on the other side are 2 of the other rack card designs that I've made. I'm just kind of changing the designs here and there to update them every year and things.
So all of these things came here to be
Yes.
eaten, roasted duck breast with cranberry?
Yes. This one I chose because this was a November meeting, so this was a couple of days before Thanksgiving. So a lot of people treated this as like Martha, were you at this one for Thanksgiving? Everyone treated this as like a dish for Thanksgiving thing. So yeah, we usually get this many things. Yeah, we get a lot of people. We're maxing out our space in this room. Nina and I have got very creative on how tables go together and what works and what doesn't, because we're maxing out about 35 sometimes 40 people with a potluck table, with seating, with all sorts of stuff. Sometimes we even get a little baby in. She's lots of fun with that too. So we just try to have fun with it as much as we can, but we are working through a lot of cookbooks. We do a lot of checkouts here for different cookbooks, and I do take suggestions from the club members, but ultimately I do end up picking the books as it had been kind of picked by the groups before. That just becomes very difficult. Our branch doesn't have the cookbook, things like that. It's easier. I can make sure that we have on our shelves in this branch every single one of these cookbooks. So I order them, make sure we have every single one. So any cookbook that we have done, we have it on our shelves.
Do you specify a serving size, like serving 10 or serving 5 or?
We don't specify a serving size. We just use whatever is in here, but some people do ask me, and I do say, so like this one here says, makes 4 servings. Because there is so much food that comes in, you saw that long list, we don't really have to worry too much about serving sizes. Some people will double the recipe just fine, but other times, something like this, you can just take a tiny bit and you're eating so much that we don't have to worry about it. We have never ever run out of food. I will tell you that. We have never, ever run out of food. Even giving extra food to my staff that's here that night, to take plates home, we never run out of food. People want to either leave it here for us to take because they make so much of it. So we've never had that issue.
A fun thing about the cookbook is people are comfortable enough that they say like, that was such a mistake.
Yeah.
Or they'll say, well, I didn't have this, and so I decided that just put this thing in instead of that thing. So, I mean, it's a lot of camaraderie. And when earlier we would have, the tables were a little bit broader, but we'd put all the food in the center of the table and eat around it. But it got to be so big and so much food that EJ came up with this brilliant idea. That whole wall,
is
the whole wall is food, and it's almost breaking apart to a new, different dessert table now.
Separate dessert tables, drink tables. We've had to use our tiny little kitchenette here. It's just a sink and a thing. That's where we had to put our drinks because we didn't have enough tables anymore in the room to add drinks to anything. And if you go to the very last slide, David, yeah, so this is just a smattering of the cookbooks that we've done since I've been here. This is our current one. We'll be doing that one actually tomorrow. And my favorite that I love to talk about are these 2 in the center here. So those are recipes inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. So not your traditional kind of recipes for Cookbook Book Club. I was a little nervous about putting those on the schedule, but it turned out to be a huge hit. They really loved the opportunity to kind of really go crazy and explore different flavors and kind of make it look messy, which is a lot of those, lots of kind of grenadine syrup, fake blood, and all sorts of stuff happening in these, all sorts of stuff. And they all had really strange names. And so it was a lot of fun to listen to everyone's experience with those, but they had a great time with it. They've been really good sports for everything that we've done. So
Martha was telling the Greene County Board of Supervisors about this, and I was remembering that the Cookbook Book Club was actually JMRL's first virtual program out of COVID, where Dina was like, hey, we have to, like 3 weeks into, we're shut down here. Like, people really are asking for this. We got to figure out a way to make it happen. So it was a driving, innovative force too.
April 2020 was the very first one, and it was the first one to meet.
That is so neat, EJ.
So are there other branches that are doing this?
no, currently there are no other branches doing this type of club.
Great camaraderie, community.
It really is a lot of fun. What better to conjugate around food and
Right.
food that you create. We've had people come up from Crozet. We've had people come all the way from Scottsville. We've had people travel a long way to come to the club, which is, it's wonderful. And I think part of the advantage of putting those cookbooks out ahead of time is that people can plan if they want to come for a longer period or a longer drive, they can make that happen if they would like to. There was, I think when Haley Tompkins was at Crozet, she had talked about a little bit trying to do something at Crozet, and I just don't think it ever got to start. But they're the closest branch that has come to it. They've come and talked to me and asked me about it before. So hopefully that we'll get some more, because I think it's a lovely idea. So.
Have you guys done any publicity around it, like just from the sort of angle of like the cool or surprising things that libraries are doing? Like, it seems to
I
be.
don't think so. I think this is a good candidate for that Library of Virginia blog too,
Sure.
that we did with Gordon Avenue, and their I think they have the like silent book club was like, oh, this is a cool, neat thing, and they spread it around throughout the state. So that's a great idea.
It also seems like a thing that like a lot of other libraries might want to emulate if they knew about it.
Yeah.
Like,
And that it works.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess, so when you say publicity, it's not like, there hasn't been a push for it because I don't think they could take many more.
Right, I'm not talking about getting,
But
more
public
like a
interest piece, yeah.
whole thing about what JMRL is and that you would never imagine or expect.
They have to take it to the whole hallway.
We have to go up to the hall upstairs.
I'm working actually with Java to see if we can meet across the hall. They have an
Yeah.
industrial kitchen next door at the senior center. And so we're negotiating to see if we're gonna be able to meet over there.
So ahead of time, people sign up for.
Yeah,
what they're
so
gonna do,
people-
So you don't have duplication.
Absolutely. Starting tomorrow night, I will have the new cookbook with me at the club, and it will be a frenzy. They will want to see it
Oh, okay.
immediately to start trying to write down what they want to do so they can get on the book. I don't release I don't have the log with me because I don't want to take it away from the desk if it comes in. But that log goes live the morning after the club. So no one can sign up that night. They have to wait until Wednesday morning. First come, first serve. You'd be here at 10 a.m. to get into that log if you want to be. Okay. And I do tell them, they always ask, the recipe I wanted is written down. Can I still do it? Absolutely do duplicates. Nothing comes out the same. It was just an attempt to stop everything from being like chocolate chip cookies or something like that. It just kind of spreads out people's, stretching the imagination of what you're gonna do when you cook, I think helps a lot. So I think that does that. Yeah, so they come in starting morning of the next club.
And do
we'll
you
have
get
this-
men and women doing
Yes.
it? Yes, I saw a man.
Yeah, we have lots of spouses or partners that come with, and a lot of the time they'll just say, I'm here to eat, which is totally fine. You can just show up to the club. You don't have to bring a dish if you don't want to. You can show up to eat. There's, like I said, plenty of food.
Yeah.
You are not required to bring a dish at all. We would love to just have you. And like I said, we have an infant. She's certainly not bringing anything, but she brings herself and she's fun. So it's a good group. We have a pretty constant group of about probably 20 that are here pretty much every month. And then in the summer it ebbs and flows just based on travel and things like that. Yeah.
Great.
Great. That's
Thank
a
you so much.
Great idea. Thank you.
And EJ's gonna be offering a tour of the Green County Library at the end of the meeting here for anybody.
Without food. No.
Without. I think we should bring up the board schedule.
Wait, we'll have to make our meeting on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
The package the leftovers.
All right, next up, committee appointments. We have a fines and fees working group report.
Of sorts. So we got together to discuss try to define our metrics and measures and timeframes, as well as what steps we'll take going forward. And timeframe, they were thinking, I think we're probably looking towards January 1st if we make any moves for it going to effect. We do have a meeting scheduled next month, April 14th, to meet again. Some of the metrics that we talked about was just trying to figure out what the goal is of the group, which I believe kind of the consensus going through everything was to come up with a decision to bring to the board as far as what we can do in the discussion of possibly removing fines for late books. And if we're not going to remove the fines, then whether it's going to be investigating changes to having automatic renewals done and different steps. And anything I missed?
I think that we spent some time talking about the overarching, what are we doing here? And I think that we came up with that the group is interested in focusing on removing barriers to access here.
Yeah.
So that means we first need to define like basically every word in that sentence, like what is access, what are the barriers, and what do we mean by remove? So that was one of my big takeaways too. Good first meeting. That's a good place to start. Yeah.
Thank you all for working on this. It's been going on for a while. Look forward to updates. All right, under old business, really old business, we'll
Yeah.
talk about the fiscal year 24 audit.
Which is this was put on here because I was hoping to have the audit to share with you all, but that was optimistic. The audit is finished. It's with our auditors in their QC and their quality control section now. So when we get it, it's got the things that I look for are, does it have any findings? And it does not. And is there any revenue or money that's due back to our local jurisdictions, which there is not. So the things that would mean the board would need to get involved, they're not there. So in my mind, it's a clean audit, but we don't have the draft yet. I think I mentioned in the past, this is kind of an ongoing problem we've been having the last few years. The city contracts with a firm for our auditing service as well. That firm audits the city of Charlottesville and then audits JMRL, and ours is getting further and further away from the end of the fiscal year. So we're going to meet with the city folks after this and have a conversation about moving forward, because this is really late. The state asks for it from libraries in January, and now we're not going to have it until March, April, basically. So the hard deadline there is May 1. If we don't get an audit to the state by May 1, we don't get state aid. So, I like to get it 6 months in advance to make sure that we've got it in, if there are any questions or whatnot. But at any rate, I should have it any day now. It's with the quality control, and I'll send it out to you all. We'll post it up on our webpage. I'll send it to your jurisdiction. The question for the board is, are you all interested in having the auditors come in to talk through the process? Every few years we do that. Well, they'll explain, here's what we do, here's what we found, here's how it works. And I think sometimes there's value in that, but the board can choose basically whether or not to ask the auditors to come make a report. Very strong feelings.
Seems like a every 5 years type of thing to me.
Yeah.
So you should not never do it, but you should, but
Not every year.
I feel we need it every year. So
Especially if there's not any findings that we're.
Sure.
How long has it been
It's
since?
getting
you
later and
last-
later, yeah.
That's the question, right?
Um,
It's been a few years.
I think, I seem to remember it, so it can't be more than 3.
I remember. Yeah.
So it's been since you started on the board, so within,
3 years.
All right, so we'll look at next year.
okay, next year. All right, easy enough.
And it'll be on time next year, so we can.
Hopefully.
David, I have a question just procedurally. If you got the final report on your desk tomorrow, what other steps would you need to go through before you can turn that around to the state? I'm just looking for bottlenecks or
Right.
blockers.
It doesn't require any, like, the board is not accepting it. This was an audit of us basically. So once they sign off and say this is done, then it can go.
Okay, so if it's.
So there's nothing that needs to happen. The things that we needed to do, we've already done. Like, they need a letter from JMRL stating that, they followed these steps. They ask us. It used to be they would come in September and sit in an office at the central library and go through invoices. They would ask, like, Jerry, can you bring me this invoice from last June and this, and Kayla, can you bring me that? Now they have electronic access to all that, so we don't, it's kind of, I liked it the other way because we knew where they were and what they were doing. That's kind of a black hole. But at any rate, all that back and forth has already happened, so now when they say we're done, then it's official. So I'll share it with the board and send it to the state.
And the individual jurisdictions don't need to sign off.
No, they don't need to sign off on it, but we post it and I send it out to them. We're required to provide it to them. But there's no body signing off on it, basically. This is an independent review.
Is it done electronically?
They-
Are you sending it
Yes.
electronically?
Yes. And in fact, last year was the first year the state allowed that, so that's, to Mike's point, that's one less barrier to jump.
I know with LLCs, they're requiring that you do everything, electronically.
Yeah.
And it's an insane trying to figure your way around it.
This one's pretty easy. The state library just needs, they'll even take a link to it if we post it and, here's where you can find it. So, yeah. Okay, thank you. I will not ask the auditors to come in for SCE this year, but I will double check on what the date was for the last one.
Good suggestion, once every 5 year extension. We talked last meeting, donation to the Department of State, and a motion, I believe.
Yeah, and I can answer any questions or provide any background to this because it has been a little while.
I'd like to take a stab at reviewing my understanding of this
Yes.
and then have you correct
Sure.
the parts that I don't get. So there's been a bequest and there's been multiple installments, this is the third one from this estate and it's bequested to the library directly, JMRL. If we had a shovel ready project for $70,000. Theoretically, the library could turn around and do that. But A, we don't necessarily have a shovel-ready project, and B, that introduces a number of budget complications because we have a structured budget and a structured process of approval and so forth, and there's not a place to say, well, we're just expanding by $70,000 for this project. For various reasons, we happen to have essentially an endowment fund that's managed by the, what is the relation of I know you did tell me this before, the relationship between the Friends of the Library and the managers of this endowment.
The endowment sits at the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation and a series of funds that are the Friends family of funds there.
Okay.
So the money sits with the CACF, but the control of disbursement is with the advisory board for the CACF, which is made up of our board, the JMRL president and vice president, the Friends board president and vice president, and myself.
Okay. And we work closely with those individuals to make sure that their decisions are aligned with the library's goals and needs. However, it's, as disclosure, the library, JMRL, is no longer, once we make this choice today, if that's what we choose, it's no longer in direct control of the library. We're working through these affiliated or aligned organizations. And then the last piece that I think is important is what happens with the $70,000. The CACF managers target an expenditure in a sort of a normal endowment model, where they'll spend about 4.5% of the entire endowment a year for library needs. And through the magic of compound interest and so forth, that means that 4.5 can happen indefinitely. Additionally, if we have large capital projects from time to time, that's available, and so this would contribute towards that being available. What that means is instead of $75,000 on something in the near term, we'll just be spending an incremental, based on this 70,000, 4.5, we'll be spending an incremental 3,150 on library needs indefinitely to the future. I'm a little vague on how those needs are identified, and I know you talked about that a little before. We don't necessarily need to get into that now, but there's the amount annually. You gave a report on this. It's far more than $3,000 a year but I'm just saying that whatever that threshold has been, we're going to be bumping it up a little bit going forward indefinitely. Did I get that right?
It's pretty good.
Okay. So everyone in the future
We
who
recorded that, so we can play it back.
Partly I'm just for people in the room, but also just anyone who's interested in this decision in the future, we'll have kind of a full context.
And I would say in the last few years, so we did the board CE last year, and the advisory committee meetings generally happen in June, July, like coming into the new fiscal year. Last year was the first year that JMRL opened up budgeting requests for this to management staff, basically, like they would request other equipment. They can ask for special projects that the advisory committee will review and recommend or not recommend to the CACF. So the process there is basically, and those requests were due actually last week or 2 weeks ago, I think, from managers. So Jerry and I will review them now. We'll compile them. We'll look through and see if there are things that, competing interests or for whatever reasons need to be bumped up or bumped down, and then we'll bring them to the advisory committee, here's what we think should happen. The advisory committee will vote. We'll bring that information to the Friends board and to the JMRL board, and the CACF will send a check for next year, and JMRL will spend down that amount throughout the year.
And can you just explain, just to follow up on what Mike was saying, why we're putting this money in the Art and Jane Hess Fund as opposed to the other 10 different funds?
The Art and Jane Hess Fund is the largest fund, and it is the catch-all fund, like for JMRL. There were initially, when the Friends started this endowment fund, there was only the Art and Jane Hess Fund. Then they got several bequests over the next 5 to 10 years in the 90s, basically.
And then they started individual funds.
So those were focused. There's one that's only for Charlottesville Albemarle. There's one that's only for educational purposes. And then Peter McIntosh and I in 2018 went to the CACF and said, we want one for each branch so that the branches can fundraise there. And we used this very successfully to fundraise for the Nelson County renovation. The money all went to the CACF fund, and then expenditures are made out of that. The branch manager can ask for things moving forward. So when the central library renovation fundraising really starts, it'll be the central library fund here. The board can make any recommendation they'd like here. This is the catch-all.
So
All of
the
them.
central library could take money out of the art and Jane
Yes.
has.
It's the most unrestricted endowment we have.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yes, thank you.
Which is why it's a good place to put this money,
Yeah.
which is also unrestricted.
Who would like to make this motion?
I will.
Okay.
I move that JMRL deposit the third interim distribution of $70,000 from the estate of J. Leonard Hartman to the Art and Jane Hess Fund of the Friends of the Library family of funds at the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. And thank you. All right, on to new business. We have the fiscal year 26.
Can I ask one old business thing?
Sure.
Do we have, or current business, do we have an update on what the jurisdictions are doing with the 2026 budget?
Yes, I
Is that
do.
part of
I-
your
you know,
report?
We decided we're going to lump that into the library record.
Okay,
We decided because I forgot to put it in the agenda, so I'll get to it in my report.
just was curious.
Scheduled library closings for next fiscal year starts July 1st. You have it in your handouts. Not much change really, certainly not much change in the number of holidays. As usual, we're trying to figure out when Christmas falls and how to work the holiday schedule around Christmas. I think this year, so we got 3 days closed at Christmas. We had 4 days last year, right? Is it?
Last year, I think we closed Central on the Sunday, but it wasn't a paid
That's right.
holiday, but
Right.
the building was closed.
Right.
There's no Sunday hours
Okay.
in this range. So the board has done 3 days at Christmas for the last few years. And I think staff have really appreciated that.
Any comments, questions? If not, we need a motion for this.
Yes,
Okay.
you can
Yeah, are we
either take a
endorsing
motion and
it?
vote now, or we can do it next month if.
Is this an endorsement or a board decision?
It's what we're calling a schedule.
Right.
There's two of them, this and the fines and fees, and I think traditionally we've had a motion.
Yeah,
The board sets the close dates for.
okay, that's the question. Okay, so I move that we accept the 2025-26 schedule of library closings as proposed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Moving on to the board self-evaluation. See, optimistically, I hope everybody has had a chance to complete. We're all being so civil and polite when I nagged you all. I don't think there were any surprises when I looked through this, in the number of things, questions and so forth, and I don't think there were any real things that jumped out at me. I'd like to just take a few minutes to look through it, and if there are comments or questions, especially in the narrative questions, people have anything that they'd like to point out or say that, yes, that's true, no, that's not true. Be happy to entertain any of that. I think this is, I mean, I realize that this is, having now retired and not having to do an annual evaluation every year, I feel like a great weight lifted off my shoulders. But I appreciate the opportunity to do something like this as a board, because I think it really does at least focus what we're talking about on a month-to-month basis, I think, so.
One comment,
Certainly.
this is the board's conversation, but just to help guide it there, the handouts that you have in front of you should have all of them that were received, and the link online has been updated as well for the handouts to include all of them. This survey comes directly from an appendix of the state library's public library governing board's handbook. There, with the exception of, I think, the last question, which is something that this board added a few years ago, just to have the board thinking about like when we're recruiting for board members, what sorts of skills would we maybe be looking for? So that's my only note, is that this is something that the state has provided as here's something to guide your conversation. And the only change we've made has been that one.
Since you brought that up, I'd like to follow up.
Yeah.
I think first of all, I didn't see a lot of robust response to that question this year.
Yeah.
It would be, I think the original intent was it's something we could provide to the jurisdictions when they're making appointments, because ultimately that's who decides. So, and my impression is that has not really been happening, partly perhaps because we're not getting strong responses, although we could, capture information from the past couple of years. But if we're just not doing this, it seems like a little bit confusing to respondents, and so I'd be happy to, fine with omitting it going forward. I think we should either use it or not, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Any other,
And I'm fine with not.
any other comments about that? Questions? Suggestions?
So am I hearing that next year, get rid of that question for the board?
Yeah, I thought it was confusing.
Yeah, I had to go back and say.
I think it was clear. I think it was clearer in the context of when we put it in.
Because we had been discussing that.
Right.
I do think it's useful, wouldn't hurt, David, to go back through past however many years. The answers aren't going to really change anyways.
Yeah.
We consolidate all the answers we got, and then whenever, it might not hurt, whenever we know that terms are ending or vacancies are coming up, just send the proper representative at the jurisdiction. This is something that board members canvassed and came up with in the past is skills that we think are useful as you're making your decisions.
Okay.
But I think even if we did this for 10 more years, I don't think you'd end up with brand.
I think we've seen.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I don't think you'd come.
Fundraiser.
Yeah, I don't think you'd have brand new,
That guy. Not so nice guy.
I didn't mean to, I do share Tony's interest in the discussion of anything that stood out to people or had questions about, or in terms of the contents, but since we were talking about the structure.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's just the formatting.
Yeah.
I will absolutely.
For myself personally, I did go back to last year's synopsis to take a look, because I was like, the way the question is written, it's confusing. Because it's like you're looking for something that's not already in the survey. And it's what else can be added, what else should we be looking for? And that was my impression or take on it.
I think that's a good.
Yeah, I agree.
The other thing I was, when I first looked at this, confused about, just because in law, you have to do continuing legal education. And they're outside of what your normal business is, the course you take kind of thing, which we don't do. And so I realized after I looked at it that the continuing ed is what we do in our meetings, not, but there is an opportunity, there has not been, I guess you could do it on your own, go to the library, American Library. Yeah, which I did once, actually.
There are lots of opportunities
Right.
that are coming up on our email.
Yeah, to participate in.
Yeah, all trustees by default are members of the Virginia Library Association, so you get all of their opportunities.
Yeah, and there
There
are
are also
a lot of
national ones.
Yeah.
I've talked to the state in the past about how I'd be interested in having them coordinate and provide more trustee education, like the VLA conference might have a session or two about trustees, but I think it would be useful for you all to talk to trustees from Central Rappahannock or to talk to trustees from Richmond or this or that, just to.
I mean, Jane Ditmore did a good one that it was online, about that question, about what skills board should be looking for to be a better representative of their community. It was really good.
And the other real big resource that we have that I probably haven't pushed enough with you all is the membership in the Center for Nonprofit Excellence. And they have training that's specifically targeted for boards. Now, those boards are not all library boards, they're all over the place. place.
Yeah.
So some of them though are things like what do you need on your board? You know, you need a lawyer, you need a nice guy, you need a not nice guy, you need a cook, you need all those things. But they also have like fundraising and some of the other things that came out of this.
And are those in person?
No, most of them are virtual.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be helpful.
I can send something out about that.
Yeah,
And we're members of them,
Yes.
right? So we shouldn't have to pay extra. Oh, okay, then yeah, that would be helpful.
It would also be possible. Not sure, I think there's pros and cons. It'd be possible and I think we hadn't done this in my memory, but this is probably more 8 years ago type of thing. That one of those types of presentations would be part of the CE, where it's not a live. We're doing a lot of CEs that are about what's going on at JMRL, and those are great and important. But if we're looking for outwardly prepared material on sort of larger trend type issues, that's one source and one.
They tend to be,
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
that's the trade-off, you know, how much you're meeting.
Yeah, you'd have to find the.
Watching.
Yeah, but certainly at least once a year to do something like that, I think would be great.
Yeah, I mean, so the pro of that, one pro of that is everybody's seeing it at the same time, so there's a critical mass for discussion and sort of reaction and consensus. If we were all doing that on our own in different directions, that would also be a plus of that. That would be, each of us would have some potential thing that we could identify, you know, we could have 10 times the amount of options that we're sort of exploring and then finding which ones are valuable to bring back. So.
And there are certainly meetings where when the president's putting the agenda together, you can tell that, oh, like, you know, last month was really busy. We had all this business to do. This month is a little lighter and maybe there would be room for,
right.
You know, there's not as much pressing like, oh, we have a budget to do or this or that.
I do like the idea, changing gears a little bit, of a mixer or with
networking.
Well, I know with some of these other nearby trustees. I suppose theoretically something like the VLA conference,
Right.
you know, if it's ever going to was ever in Richmond, for example, we could try and get an evening for that.
It's in Richmond this year.
So,
and they are accepting applications now, I think, for sessions. So we could put on a session, the Virginia Library Association. When is it, did you say? What was your question?
This one is
What are you
Oh,
talking?
it's the annual conference of the Virginia Library Association.
and it's been in Norfolk for a couple of years, I feel like, but I said if it's in Richmond, then it's closer, maybe for more realistic for some of us to go an hour each way. And also, I would not, maybe we can take this offline, but I would not necessarily think of it as a public session, but it's, hey, you guys can be in town, we can get it to be in town, and let's have.
I guess I have some questions about the public meeting nature of it. Like if 3 of you are in there and you're talking about JMRL, then that should be, the people of our area should be able to listen in on what.
Yeah, I had that thought. And so is it a library, or are we conducting business, or are we just comparing notes with someone else? So again, that might be an offline thing to explore. Good thoughts.
There was a response on there that said, you know, I wish the board could be more proactive and not so reactive. And just in the vein of this conversation, like one topic that I would be interested in as CE on that could be someone from inside the library, but also we could benefit from an outside perspective, would be just on like what is the cutting edge or bleeding edge of libraries right now, right? Like, you know, I mean, I would imagine technology would be an important piece of that, but not the only piece. But right, what are libraries experimenting with, and that, you know, and this could potentially tie back into the conversation around the endowment fund too. Like, it could give us an idea of something new that the library could do that would require some investment to get it going. And so instead of just like, how do we keep doing the things we're doing, it would be a conversation around what else could we be doing, something new.
I mean, innovations in facilities, innovations in logistics, and innovations in technology, obviously. But you know, all of these, the stuff that happens behind the scenes that makes the library what it is. And then you have, you know, those ideas like the cookbook group, you know, where It's really something that gets people excited about coming to libraries and, you know.
I would say, Peter, that a good way to get a lot of that from a lot of different resources is to go to VLA or ALA. And ALA is also on the East Coast in, I think it's in, is it in Philly this summer? So like, we're gonna send a few staff members, but we would also send trustees, you know, we pay for conference fee and a hotel room and meals and things. Because that's a bit overwhelming sometimes, especially ALA. You can see all of them, but
Yeah.
that's a good way to.
Yeah,
get
and it could be that whoever goes to one of those
some
could
insights.
report back.
Yeah.
So the whole board could benefit from like, here's an array of a dozen really cool new things that I saw. And some of those wouldn't even fit, right? Because it'd be like, well, this library's too big or too small or whatever, but just to get a little bit more perspective of the landscape of what's going on in public libraries.
I appreciate that.
Mike, I have a question, because I thought it was incredible, really, when we started checking out those how-to boxes. And I mean, that was a completely different approach to a library. So how did that come about?
I'm guessing that somebody saw that at a conference,
Yeah.
or they saw a webinar about it or something. We've been doing that library of things for a long time, and it's no longer a fresh new idea in the
No, I
library
know.
world. It's fresh and new to us.
Yeah, it was to me.
But yeah,
And
it's
I wonder how
probably,
that came about.
we probably saw that, one of my librarians probably saw that from some library in Ohio was doing it or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah.
Is any library doing a thing like, I know that one of the museums has this semi that goes around. And then there's like a museum exhibit within it. And one thing that keeps on coming up is space, the final frontier, that we don't have space. And I wonder if there could be like a semi thing, and then it would be a special library event or like a new tool that we get that travels from one place to the next place, library places, and is there for a week, a month, or whatever. It'd be kind of an interesting idea to
Like an
explore.
exhibit type thing?
Like an exhibit or a hands-on kind of thing. You know, like this library, there's a little bit of storage in there.
That's about it.
You know,
There's an
and
empty elevator shaft on the other side of it.
there's a stairwell to upstairs. You know, so things like a maker space or something like that is, you can't really do it here because there's no space. However, if there was this semi thing that came in for a month with a makerspace tool, you know, that would be really encouraging. You know, maybe its real home is someplace else, but it would get people involved with it and then moving back and forth.
It's a perfect thing for the endowment. See, a perfect way to spend some money out of the endowment. Yes. One of those innovative projects that could, you know, be funded out of the endowment as a start, and then if it got rolling, it would, you know, become part of the operational budget or something like that. Comments, questions? All right, thank you. And thanks everybody for doing that. Appreciate it. Great directors.
Okay, so as Brandy pointed out, there was no budget update on the agenda this month, but I have a budget update for you. So from board activity, Martha and I met with the Greene County Board of Supervisors to share JMRL's budget request. At this point, as of today, all 5 jurisdictions have draft budgets out that include full funding for JMRL. So the elected officials are reviewing them now. They're having open public meetings. They're talking about tax rates and things like that. But at this point, all 5 of them include the entirety of JMRL's request, which is a great place to be in right now. They're deliberating, talking to their constituents. Actual voting and adoptions for finalizing these will start in April and roll all the way through. I think Nelson's is the last in June, and theirs came out just a few weeks ago. So So the update is we're in good shape for right now. And the next phase for JMRL is that the equipment budget requests have come into the administrative staff, start putting those together, and then ask the budget committee to meet probably in May, Alita. And then the budget committee will finalize an equipment budget to append to JMRL's proposed fiscal year 26 budget, and then you all will vote on the final package. Okay. We're in good shape. I haven't gotten many questions back from any jurisdictions about our request at this point. We did all that work in December to kind of work that out. Most of them understood the issue we were having with the healthcare, the 30% increase, 20% more than we had budgeted for. But I don't know how understanding they will be if that continues to happen year after year after year. So more conversations to be had there. Okay, right. I also wanted to mention that this year is going to be the 75th anniversary of the Swanson case that was tried in the Swanson case courtroom at the Central Library on September 5th. So JMRL is working with a group from the Bar Association, from the legal aspect, and from the Law Library at the university, the Historical Society in Charlottesville, Albemarle, the NAACP, and the Jefferson School to plan some programming. So just to put an early bug in that there will be an event of some sort around that day. The law school is also planning a walk. It's going to be in Charlottesville that may go from as far as the Central Library to the law school. So it's going to be a couple miles, but stopping at some places around the way. Like they just dedicated a marker last week to the Carver Inn on Preston Avenue, where Gregory Swanson stayed for a while, so it would stop there and talk and some various other sites. So it's going to be a lot of activity around that JMRL will be hosting some in that room because that's the court case itself. A reminder, this could have been an announcement, but the Friends sale starts next Friday, so not this weekend. The members only night will be a week from Friday on April 4th, and the full sale runs April 5th through 13th. So that's one of the annual biggest fundraisers for JMRL. Go buy books, buy Christmas books early. You can volunteer. They still will take volunteers at this point. If you're interested, reach out to the Friends or let me know and I'll put you in touch. Next up, I got a lot of questions last weekend, and some of you all might have gotten some too, when the president's executive order eliminating IMLS came out, which is the Institute for Museum and Library Services, I think. So a lot of people, came to me, including some media requests saying, well, what does this mean? What does this mean from JMRL? So I'll just give you the information that I have now. And if you get questions about it, feel free to send it to me or answer to the best of your abilities. JMRL receives no direct funding from IMLS. So no money comes into the budget that you all are vote on from that federal funding. Instead, we get broad support from the state library that gets that direct federal funding. It does not include state aid. That is a state of Virginia thing that the Virginia Assembly passed a law on that and collects those monies. So that federal funding is not what's used to buy our books. But we do get a lot from the state that is potentially on the chopping block for the next few years here. And I'll just go through that. The biggest one, the state gets about $4.3 million. The biggest thing that would be on the chopping block is Find It Virginia, which are a series of electronic databases that are available for every public library in the state and are on our webpage. When you go to databases, they're there. It's the core of our online databases. It includes novelists, universal class, homework help, universal language, and much more. So this would be the biggest direct impact that our patrons would see. There's a resource here. Transparent Language Online, I think, is one. So we have people who have accounts, they're learning languages from our databases, that would potentially, the state wouldn't be able to offer that anymore. We're already looking internally at what resources we would try to pick up ourselves or what we would need to maybe let go if that were to happen. Leadership and stakeholder development comes from that funding to the state. So like new director orientations, trustee handbook, that type of thing, that we were just talking about, like that has been paid for out of the IMLS money that the state has. Youth services coordination is another big one. Summer reading program materials, nature backpacks that we check out, kind of support for children's services throughout the state. And I'm not saying all these things are going to disappear, but just the funding that pays for them now may be gone if that federal agency is gone. Data collection, so bibliostat, sometimes you'll hear Jerry or I talk about, that's the big report that we owe the state every year, and it's got everything JMRL. Like here's how much money we spent, here's how much money we have, here's how many patrons we serve, here's how much staff we have, here's all of our stats. That goes to the state and they use federal funding to help process that. And as part of that, it allows us to compare that data. We have access to get every library in the country that's on the same software. We can look at what their stats are, and I'm not sure what would happen with that. And then last, it's probably administrative staff for the library development team. A lot of their salaries are paid for, and I think it's right now it's a 4-person team. Some of those come from federal funds, so we relied on them. The head of that came to our training day last year. We asked them questions about policies and things like that. I'm not sure what that would look like. So I'm just letting you all know in case you get questions, because I got a lot. My phone started blowing up with people saying, oh, libraries are in the news. Like, what's happened to my library? And it's like, okay, well, we're not getting any direct funding there, but we would see an impact, and we would have to decide, the board and the library would have to figure out how to move forward.
I know you've mentioned in the past,
Yeah.
lobbying at the state level
Mhm.
to get full funding, and that you felt like that had paid off.
Yes.
Is there any lobbying at the federal level?
Yeah, there is something similar to the statewide legislative day. There's a national legislative day where libraries across the country will go send representatives to talk to local jurisdictions. And I know the state has a delegation of public library directors that went to talk to our senators from Virginia and various other congressmen to advocate for funding for libraries. And I think most of that happened before this news came out. So most of it was about more funding, not about trying to keep what was already there. So there is information, you can go to ALA and they've got information. If people ask you, well, what can I do? What I would tell them all is join the Friends of the Library, for one. Like, that's the best way you can support your local public library, is you support the folks that are providing that direct funding to the library and would do any advocacy. I know the Friends Board was going to write some letters out to elected officials. And then number 2, you can look at the ALA and see, and it'll have information about if you wanted to write a letter to your representatives to say, hey, this is important to me. I'd like you to do what you can to look into this. Any other questions on that? That probably would have been an agenda item if it hadn't happened after we already put the agenda.
The state gets 4.5 million.
In federal funding from
And they
IMLS.
distribute that to the.
Yeah, that was a snapshot.
We wouldn't get that.
No, we don't
get
get
it.
4.5.
No.
Going down. We're not-
What I heard was that 4.5 is used for various programs
Yes.
that JMRL benefits from.
Yeah.
It's
Those
not,
things I
it's not
mentioned are all
distributed
part of that
to
program.
jurisdictions.
We don't get any funding directly, here's money to pay for your operational costs. So when people ask you as a JMRL trustee, like, does this mean we're gonna have to close the library? Or we're gonna let staff go, or this or that? Like, no. There will be consequences, and it is a trickle down thing where, like, some of these things the state might have to pick up, and the legislator might decide to use some of state aid, and then we're in the hole for state aid, and then we're going back to our jurisdictions. It could kind of snowball over time, but we're not there yet. Yeah. That's down the line. So. Okay. Just an update. The last time you were out at Scottsville, Ann Lindbergh gave you a CE about the food pantry that they were going to put there. That is completed as of this weekend, and it is up and stocked, and it's got food in it. So I'll send some pictures around when we get them. Last thing I wanted to mention is, this is specifically for the Albemarle trustees, but while I've got you in the room, Albemarle is working on their new comprehensive plan, and there is mention of libraries in there. They have a goal here, this objective rather, and this is in the community facilities section: provide high quality, modern, welcoming, comfortable, fully accessible, and community oriented library services and facilities to promote accessibility for all community members. This is draft language that they're still working on right now. They've been working very hard on their comprehensive planning, so their board hasn't even probably seen this yet, but they're going to be discussing it soon. There's a planning commission meeting Tuesday the 25th at 4, and the full board is going to discuss it on April 16th. So just if you have any thoughts or ideas about what is in here, this is the chance to let them know. They already reached out, the planning staff, and talked to JMRL a little bit about what should the next maybe up to 50 years look like, depending on how long they keep the plan. What they've got in there is maintain and enhance existing county-owned and co-owned libraries, so that's Gordon Avenue and Central, to address service demands, pursue methods to enhance library services for county residents through innovative and cost-effective opportunities like more bookmobile, digital services, kiosks, things like that. Provide a safe and comfortable environment in and around each library site. So safety improvements for county-owned library facilities and sites, such as more lighting, sidewalks, bike lanes, transit service. Provide resources for the renovations of the main library. You like that one?
Right there.
Provide and promote access to all library services and materials to all community members through both in-house and community outreach efforts. Coordinate with JMRL on efforts in pursuing state and federal government initiatives for public library services. So Peter, to your point, in the past, Albemarle County and Louisa County have included in their legislative packages to the state saying fully fund state aid, but I don't think anybody has included that on a federal level, and the county, Albemarle County is at least, it's on the board there. Okay, and then the last one is collaborate with JMRL to identify the need for improved or new facilities and services in the development area, the rural area, and the town of Scottsville. So that's basically all of Albemarle, but specifically Scottsville gets mentioned there. And I know we've had some conversations about that branch as there's new housing. The biggest housing boom that Scottsville's ever seen is happening right down the road in the next year or so. So things are going to change there, and that library is the size of this room. So the county is aware that down the road that might be a need. The other places are the development areas and the rural areas. So that's kind of they left it very open, but in my mind, that's probably a southern urban ring library that this board in the past has discussed and the county has discussed. And the development areas would be any other place, basically. So, like I said, mostly an Albemarle thing, but important for the whole board to know, especially with the central library inclusion.
So does the currently applicable version of this plan have a similar objective?
Which one?
You mean the one that's in effect now, this year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that's their old comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
I think it says put a library on Pantops.
But okay.
As I remember, it was nowhere near as
What?
full featured as this.
Sure. So first of all, when was the current plan?
I think it's around 20 years old.
Okay. Yeah.
So 05 maybe. Siri probably doesn't know that.
Yeah, and does it have so it sounds like it has some mention of library services in the plan.
I think it has a very general, like, work with JMRL to provide high quality services. That type of thing.
And okay.
And then there were some specifics about Pantops.
Great. And when you said it's being discussed in the coming months, and when do we think it would be adopted?
I think they're doing a rolling adoption of the different chapters that are on it, so I don't know basically the answer to that.
Is it a 2-year horizon and a 2-month horizon?
I think it's months.
Yeah,
months.
okay, great.
I can find that out.
Yeah, just general ballpark. I think I got the answer.
Isn't there, David, a website like I'll call it A24, but that's not what the name of it is.
I think it's like A44.
Yeah, something like that. I'm thinking about the production company. Yeah, that has all the timelines and materials and stuff like that. If you want to do a deeper dive into the.
They have done a lot of community outreach for this. It's impressive. So.
Well, I'll just say kudos to whoever, whether that's David or the central group that got some of these priorities articulated into this plan, because as we know, that's our largest funding jurisdiction. And it's great to see that they're in alignment with what our own organizational goals would be.
This is a draft, so I will, if not be in attendance, definitely be watching that April 16th Board of Supervisors meeting to hear what the discussion is like and what kinds of feedback they have. The only other thing is either another matter or a report, just to let you all know that I will be away from JMRL next week. I had spring break for the Charleston City Schools, and my wife and I are taking a little trip. So, on next week.
Nice.
And I have nothing else to report.
Buried the lead there, I'd say, but it's other matters. Okay. Under future agenda items, we will be sure to have a budget update as an agenda item. Everyone's making a note of that?
Yeah, I'm making.
And we're back at Northside next.
No, we're not.
Where are we next month?
Hey, don't,
Next month, we are in Livingston, Nelson.
We're in Nelson County.
Yes.
I'll be in,
Is that part of the system? I had no idea.
Let me check the calendar to make sure I know.
Yes, the meeting next month is in Nelson.
That, we'll have a policy committee meeting at 1:45, where we'll discuss,
Right.
we'll continue our discussion of mobile library services, among other items.
I think there's a tech committee meeting between now and then. There's an April tech committee meeting that we set quite a while ago. So there should be, there should be a report on that. That holds. There also should be a report
Fines and
on the
fees.
fines and fees. working
Fines
on
and
the-
fees, okay,
Yeah.
well, fines and fees, yes. thank
The
you.
board's annual timeline also says a 5-year plan review at that point. So Meredith and I will talk and present some, here's where we are almost 1 year into this new 5-year plan.
Other items, agenda items that we need to talk about? All right. If not, have a motion to adjourn? No, I guess we're staying.
We didn't move.
yeah.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Nay votes. Thank you. And EJ was happy to give anybody who would like a tour of the Green County facilities.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.